Okay, welcome to our next edition of Python. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about dictionaries. That's a more sophisticated data type. You can store data as a key value pair. So let's see what I mean. I'm going to create a student dictionary. So it's going to be a data type to represent a student like you would in a database, basically. So we might want to store the name of the student. So what you do is you put the key value in quotes. Also notice here that I started with curly braces, which I forgot to mention. So use a curly brace for a dictionary. Then you put your key value or your key name in quote, and then we put the value after a colon. So for the first one, we're just going to put a text string, but it can be any data type. So we'll put Robert. And for the second key, we'll put class, and then put colon before we put the value. We'll say that Robert's a freshman. And these are separated by commas, just like with a list or a tuple. So we'll say department. We'll say that this is at the university. So we'll put a colon, and we'll say that Robert's a physics major. And just to have an example, we'll have an ID for a number example. So I'm going to say 67812, and then close with the curly braces. And so we can print this out. And there you see there's all the information there. Now we could also print the keys or the values. So we could write print student dict dot keys, and let's see, that should be lowercase. So now you see department, ID, name, class. Or you can reference the values, so you could say print student dict dot values, and there we see physics 67812, Robert, freshman. Now you notice about that, I entered it Robert, freshman, physics, and then the number, but it's got those values all scrambled. So the elements in a dictionary aren't ordered the way they are in a list or a tuple. And that's not really a worry, because the way you use these in practice is to refer by key. So let's see how we refer by key. So I'm going to say print name, and to print two things on the same line, you just separate them by commas. And then we'll say student dict, and now we'll refer to the key we want to use. So I'll put name, and you see down here I put name Robert. So now you're starting to see where the dictionary is useful. So then we can say print ID student dict, and reference our ID key, and it prints ID 67812. So now we can edit these. So let's say that Robert decided he wanted to major in math instead of physics. So you could say student dict, and we'll say department, and then we'll give the new department. So we'll say mathematics, and then we'll go ahead and print out the entire dictionary. So I'll say print student dict, and you can see now it changed his department from physics to mathematics. Alright, so I paused the video for a second and I added a second student, and the reason I did that is I'm going to show you how you'd use dictionaries in practice. So I created another student, Susan, sophomore in engineering, with a different student ID. Of course, if you had to refer to individual dictionaries, that wouldn't be very useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a student list, and this is going to be a list, but the elements are going to be the dictionary. So I'm going to say student dict, and student 2. And so we can go ahead and print out individual elements of this. And the way you do that, or refer to individual elements, using print as an example. So let's say that we wanted to print out the second student, and we want to know what her department is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say print, and then I'm going to say student list. So I'm going to go ahead and reference the second student with square braces like that. So let's run that. And what it did down here is it just printed out that second student, Susan, the sophomore in engineering. So if I want to refer to an individual element, so we can say student list 1, and then what you do is you put another open bracket and then put the key value. So let's say that we want to know what department the second student is in. We just write it like that, and you see it printed out engineering. And so we could say, if we want to print out the student names, we could say print student list 0, and then the key name for the first one, and then student list 1, also key value of name. And you see it printed Robert, Susan. And of course later we'll talk about loops and show more useful ways to go through this, but you're getting the idea here of how to group different dictionaries into a single list and then refer to them. So for example, we could also say print student list. Well, let's see. Let's go ahead and say index. So I could say index equals 0, print student list index, and let's say that we wanted to refer to name, and that we also wanted to print their major. So I could put comma student list index, and then put department. Let's add one more thing. So let's say that we wanted to put their ID as well. So we could say student list index, and then ID, and then separate those by commas. And let me copy this, and I'm going to say index is equal to index plus 1. So all we did was increment that to 1, and then we'll print that again. And so we get a nice list here. So we got Robert, Robert, oh, it's down here. So we got Robert, his student ID, and then mathematics, and then Susan, her student ID in engineering. So that's a little introduction to dictionaries, and it's very easy using Python, and you can organize your data in a nice, useful way.